The next item on the agenda is Psychoactive Products Retail Location Policy Options. Councillors may recall, who have we got for this one? Mike Teelan, is it? We paused the release of the draft policy on psychoactive substances until the government legislation had been amended. And so the recommendation is that we alter the resolution and then amend the consultation dates so that we go out to consultation on the draft that had already been developed. You'd like to move that?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Yep. David East, and seconded by Andrew Turner. David.
Just a point of clarification, under 4.2 we are altering the dates on the consultation documents. I can't recall or can't see anywhere what the previous date was.
Oh, sorry, the previous dates are in the statement of proposal. They were attached to the previous report, and the dates are Tuesday the 3rd of June to Monday the 7th of July.
Thank you.
Vicky Buck.
Can I just ask, I don't quite get this because I'm not sure now what the psychoactive substances are going to be. So I don't know, like in the previous regime, I was very much in favour of limiting them to as far as we could. So anything within 50 metres of a footpath would have been fine by me. But like to limit it extremely. And for that reason, I was in favour of limiting it to as small a geographic area and as constrained by every sensitive site as we could. But now that they have withdrawn sort of any of them, I actually have no clue what we're actually consulting on. I know that there is still an Act in place, but I can't honestly say to somebody who says, what are these shops going to sell, what the answer is. And it makes it very difficult to consult or to know what it is that we're actually trying to get from the public when we actually have no clue what we're asking.
In theory, what has happened is that, if you recall, that when the legislation came out, it basically gave a number of products the opportunity to be sold and basically said that the Ministry of Health would effectively test those around their suitability. And I think in part what has happened is that the effects of the products they allowed to go out obviously has created more concerns. All they're effectively doing is pausing to allow those tests to take place. So the intention of what is being allowed to be sold hasn't changed from the previous iteration of the legislation hasn't changed what they intend to sell. No.
Sorry to be pedantic, but as I read it, these products that come in will now have to have been tested.
Yes.
But clearly what was coming in previously, some of it had not been tested on animals or anything with legs. So I don't know whether the result of what they will finally adopt will mean, I don't know how safe these products will be, or whether, given the debate about animal testing and everything else, whether any products will actually get past any new regime. And until I know that, I'm struggling to do a sensible consultation process.
I mean, yes, I can understand that point of view, apart from the fact that our consultation process is around where they can be sold. The intention of the legislation has remained unchanged. So in theory, the effect of those products should be no worse under the revised regime than was intended under the initial regime.
Theory should be no worse, but in practice it may be way less damaging. I don't know that, and until I know that, I'm struggling to ask people's opinion, because where they can be sold obviously is dependent on what it is that you are actually selling. And I don't know the answer to that yet, so that's why I'm struggling with this whole clause. I'm sorry. I can understand the Ministry of Health's problem, but I kind of figure they should figure that out first before they ask us to do the
I think
policy.
if you look at the report that's been presented, I mean, it's certainly within council's remit to simply pause. The advice that we've had from people that are going to be responsible for looking after some of this is they believe we should continue, but I think there's equally a valid argument to say actually we should wait until that legislation comes out. What you will face if you do wait, presumably, is you'll face the same problem now where you may end up having to retrospectively close down things that open up after they've been readmitted into the marketplace. But that's something that council can deal with at the time.
Paul is next.
I tend to agree with Vicky. One thing we do know is that when these places do pop up, there's a huge amount of antisocial behaviour that comes with it. And I was probably one of the few that actually opposed it just being restricted to Central City, because we know that it's just going to intensify the problem to one area. But how it's going to go forward in the future is, and what they're going to legalise is really up in the air. So it does create an issue around that. It just seems a cart for the horse.
Jamie?
No, I think that's more or less taken care of. It was just a follow-up from what Vicky was saying there, and I entirely agree with Paul. I was very dubious about just allowing it in the central city because I think that there's potential for the concentrated effect, which is also not a desirable outcome. Make no bones about it, I think that the legal highs that we've seen in the past are insidious, bloody horrible things, and in no way do I support it. It was how we get to that point of finding a solution at a local government level that I was keen to explore. Following up from what Vicky said, though, there, yes, if we don't continue with this, the consultation now, we may be in a space where we have to retrospectively close things. And I'm sorry that I'm entering into a little bit of debate in this commentary, but I'll save you all and not even speak to it when I vote. But it almost feels to me, Mike, like we're trying to come up with an answer when the reality is the question hasn't even been asked. And I just think that if people, and there are retailers that operated by selling things in the past that were deemed legal highs are now illegal highs, they're operating that uncertain space anyway. You know, they're already in a place where they know there is going to be significant change. And if they want to play that game, well, so be it. And if that means that they have to be shut down later on, well, that's exactly what they're contending with, totally irrespective of what a local authority does.
So just to be careful, I mean, I suppose we don't want to get into the debate, but I mean, the intention of the Act has remained unchanged. The people that were selling them in compliance with the legislation. The issue seems to largely have been, and Claire may correct me, that effectively the catch-up testing regime to validate that these were within the scope of the Act hadn't really got underway. That's what's caused this need to do that. So in theory, the Act will take us back to where the Act intended to lead from. Now, I think certainly, I mean, I don't think it's a position that staff are holding that say you must go and do this. It's entirely within your discretion to decide, look, we'll pause, we'll wait to see what comes out of the review. We'll wait until we start to see the first of these being approved, because presumably that, I'm not familiar with it, but they may start to be drip-fed back into the marketplace. At that point, you may wish to start your consultation then.
Phil?
Can I just ask you, like, we're talking about a policy, and so I would have thought, in fact, we know there are psychoactive substances, that's what the whole Act and policy is about. So we don't necessarily, my understanding would be that we don't necessarily have to have the drugs named or know exactly the impact, the effect on people. And my question really, though, too, is like, if we don't do this, okay, and actually develop a policy, is there a risk that we're going to be really on the back foot, once the legislation, the government legislation is firmed up, and once the drugs are tested and that kind of thing?
And I suppose that's really what lies behind the suggestion that you might want to consult now and have a policy in place around where retail outlets could be located once they've got products that have gone through the testing regime and they've got products on the market again. So I suppose it is a preemptive. The risk is that if you don't have that policy in place, the history of these manufacturers has been that they've been reasonably innovative in the way that they've been able to, react quite quickly to constraints. They may get product back on the market quite quickly once the regulations and the testing regime are in place. The risk is, I suppose, is that yes, some shops will set up wherever they want to, like we had previously, because we didn't have a policy in place to say where they could locate.
Glenn?
Thank you. It strikes me we're playing a game of cornering. We seem to be getting them into a corner, and maybe this is a question for later when we look at or revisit the policy possibly, but can you give me an answer over whether is this a chance to actually come out with a much stronger policy? Now I'm taking into account that line about they've responded promptly and innovatively to developing new products. So,
well, we were going out to consult on the draft policy that was approved, before the temporary ban was put in place. So there's certainly an opportunity, depending on the consultation feedback that you get, for a council hearing panel to come up with a tighter policy than the draft policy that we originally went out on. If feedback comes back that around where they can be located, and the suggestion is that no, they shouldn't be located here, they should be located there, then yes, you could tighten up.
if I could just ask one more on that, it also seems as if we're kind of another metaphor, putting out fires. Oh, another one flares up over there, another one there, because of the fact that they're coming out with new products. Do you think the way we go about policy can be such that we actually cover as many bases as possible, so we do?
Oh, well, the policy only allows us, the Act only allows us to say where the retailers can be located effectively, and within that you have the other extra little bits you can add on, like within a certain distance from each other and within a certain distance from other sensitive sites. So that's really the only leeway that the Act allows us to do in terms of where we want these set up.
I think the greater reality would be I suppose, not reality is probably the wrong word, the prospect is, and I think that's the prospect that Councillor Buck is referring to, and that is that perhaps things may get better to the degree that we would be less restrictive than we've currently been, because we don't know whether in fact the final version of these products are so harmless they could be sold anywhere. Far from me to comment on that. But I suppose, having said that, it's always within the scope of council to amend any policy it has through an SCP.
So, Jimmy, you're next.
Thank you. One question. Because we reviewed the 4.3, also 4.5, these two options. Looks like the 4.5 is option B is more convincible rather than the 4.3. But you particularly mentioned, especially last paragraph, the 4.5. Right now, it's only the Ministry of Health advice council have a policy. But actually, if you review 4.3, if we have a public consultation during the July and August, this time period, probably public more confused how to convince, to explain to them. However, if we review 4.5, we wait the kind of result, judicial review, and also we review the amendment, draft policy. In that time, everything has been clear. So it's quite advantage, option B, better than the option A. So I just don't know why the staff still prefer the option A rather than the option B.
Largely it was to be preemptive around, and to get a policy in place so that as people or retailers were thinking about where they might locate, it was clear to them where they could and couldn't before they even started to think about it. It was also be clear, I guess, where for people like the enforcement people, Ministry of Health and the New Zealand Police, who are sort of responsible for the enforcement side of it, they would know where they could expect to have to put resources. So I suppose it was largely an effort to be a bit of ahead of the game, but, you know...
Jamie?
Thank you.
Jamie and then Andrew.
If the council was of a mind to proceed with the special consultative procedure, from a legal point of view, what chances would there be, or is there a staff view on the possibility of being taken, down a judicial process and having this overturned just through the lack of clarity about what these products look like?
No, I don't think there'd be any risk on the basis of what the products look like. I mean, the Act says psychoactive substance products, so they will have to go through the psychoactive substance products testing regime and be cleared through that regime. Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, what I'm nervous about is we had basically thrown out or put on the back burner the question around Helmores Lane Bridge because we had a technicality sort of thing in there that said the road may not have actually been stopped in 1967. And in the great scheme of things, it makes no difference because whether they did something or didn't do something in the 60s, we're making a call on whether or not there's going to be light traffic or pedestrians now. As far as those technicalities go, I just think that if we went out and consulted on in 20 years' time or something like this, could future planes, should they be subject to a curfew? It's very hard to come up whether or not there should be because probably the effects that people will be concerned about, which would be noise and all this sort of thing, it's very hard to actually say what that looks like. So people are not in a position to be able to make an informed contribution to the consulting process.
But we know that they are psychoactive substances. We know they are to artificially mimic other substances. So they'll anything that comes into the market will meet the test of what that is, as the intention of the law is. All this policy will be saying ultimately is where you can or can't sell them. Now, what I suppose the council will do, as with any policy, it will review that in time and say, well, actually, given the broad nature of the product that's on the market, potentially in 2 years' time we may say that we've been a little restrictive or a little harsh, or not, and that could be amended. But I think the fundamentals are still there. The law hasn't changed. The law has simply actually pressed the pause button on the retail until that testing regime has been completed, including no testing on animals.
Andrew?
The purpose of the testing under the Amendment Act, is that to ensure that the products are within the scope of the original Act? It's not to clarify that products are safe or less harmful or anything of that nature, is it? It's just to clarify that the product is within the scope of the Act. So what we could end up with is exactly the same products re-entering the market, having been verified as within the scope of the Act under the testing through the amendment.
Potentially they could, yes.
And just looking at the support for continuing with the policy from LGNZ, the police and the Ministry of Health, that would suggest that there are other bodies that believe that might be the outcome of this, or that the outcome of this would be harmful rather than not harmful anyway.
That may be one of their drivers. I don't know that it is. I couldn't comment on that. I don't think Claire could either. I mean, I think the reason why most bodies are suggesting we should carry on is to give clarity and certainty to retailers when they do enter the market about where and where not they could locate.
Jamie, did you want another one? No, Vicky.
As I understand it, the purpose of the testing done by the Ministry of Health is to ensure the safety of the product. How could the Ministry of Health...
The testing's not done by the Ministry of
No,
Health.
but the regulations,
the
regulations that have to be provided by the Ministry of Health for the testing, I mean, it would be very difficult for the Ministry of Health to come up with a regime that says anything goes, wouldn't it, given their name?
Yes, but it's within, I mean, they can only find that within the context of the purpose of the legislation. And the purpose of the legislation allows for the retailing of psychoactive substances there will be limits at which point some of them may be just determined to be so harmful or to be so corrosive that they're not, that the government might not
The burden
choose to
of proof's
license.
been changed.
Sorry?
The burden of proof's been changed. Isn't that what the law does?
It just
They have to
doesn't-
prove that the psychoactive substances
Not
Are not.
do nothing.
Well, presumably they do something, otherwise
Like
people
as
wouldn't
if-
keep
as if
buying them.
Why would you buy them?
They're not turning them to sugar sweets.
That's, as I understand it though, the burden of proof has been changed. The difficulty I see now for politicians realising the community outcry about these things is that they're actually in quite a difficult position. And I think they're likely to stay there for some months, which I'm fine with, and they can stay there for a really long time as far as I'm concerned. But I think what the public feel is what the point that you've made in the report, that actually this issue has gone away, and that if we go out for consultation now, we're not going to pick up that sense of community outrage about dangerous psychoactive substances that we would have 3 months ago. And I'm not sure, I'm completely unconvinced that any government will be stupid enough to go back to the old regime and the old laws. And that at the moment is their problem, and that's fine. But I would just like to actually consult on something that we are totally clear about. Here are psychoactive substances that have been approved through a set of tests that show that they are no more dangerous than a whatever, I don't know. Or here are a range of incredibly dangerous psychoactive substances that are coming to a school near you. So I'd like to know what it is that we're actually offering the public, and I'd like the public to be aware so that they can give the best possible feedback.
The only thing that's changed is that the transitional provisions have altered. So, and that's all that's changed. And the debate is about where these products can be sold in our city. And basically we've made a decision through this process to go out to consult about restricting it to the CBD. I think that the debate will be about whether that's fair on the CBD and whether it is more appropriate to spread them into other areas. I think that's what the debate will be about. No, I don't think it will, because people know that whatever is ultimately got through the testing process will be available in their neighbourhoods if we change the policy in terms of what goes out. The way it's written at the moment, the incentive is for those in the CBD to challenge that. Whereas the incentive would have been the other way if it had been a neighbourhood one. So, but I mean, all we can do is just, I mean, if this goes through today, and I can't see any reason why we would want to hold it up and potentially leave ourselves in a situation without a policy at the time that substances come legally on the market again. I just can't understand why we'd leave ourselves exposed to that risk.
Because by the 3rd of July, we don't know what's coming on the market.
No, but when the market comes on stream, when the clever guys are able to prove under the regulations that the Ministry of Health passes that their product is safe to go on the market, we won't have a policy in place to restrict where it's sold from. That's the point that's being made. David?
Yeah, I think you've just hit the nail on the head. We've spent a lot of time worrying about what level of safety these products are going to come out with, and there are clever guys out there at the moment. No matter what the government does, they'll find ways around it. But the object of this exercise is to actually decide where these things are going to be sold, because the government's not going to ban them. They're just looking at testing them to see what sort of level of safety they will provide. So I agree with the Mayor that we need to be in a position, once that these products do come back on the market, that we have a policy as to where they can be sold. At the moment, the resolution is that they be sold in the central city area. Personally, I didn't support that notion, but I believe that we have to go out to our community to get a clear steer on what they think about it, where they want to allow this industry to set up, because if we don't, we're going to be faced with a situation where they come back on and the proliferation of stores all over the place.
Pauline?
A question about the Hamilton case. So what is their request, and do we have a timeline for a decision there? It's a bylaw, isn't it?
No, they were talking about the judicial review was about their draft policy. Oh, no, not their draft, their policy, yeah. And I'm sorry, I don't have that timeline for that review.
A bit about a total ban in their city, wasn't it?
Well, they chose an area that was so small that where it could be sold, that there was no shops there to sell them from.
Okay.
But that's subject to judicial review,
Yeah.
so...
Right. And do we have a timeline on
No.
that decision? No.
That's with the court.
I'd be quite supportive of Jimmy's point about that it might be worth waiting.
Well, I think we've already tried to address that risk, and it's always a risk, and we know that the committee had quite a significant discussion about it, and that is, you know, at what point do you start to narrow it down to the degree that effectively you act ultra vires of the legislation? And we've been down this as a council before. We went down this with our first prostitution bylaw. So we've been very careful. I don't think we run anywhere near the same risk that Hamilton runs by having narrowed it down so much that there's a great case against them for doing so.
Yanni?
Well, I think we could go round and round. We obviously have a different view. I think we should just move something and vote on it. I personally feel that we should just get on and do it. I think leaving it, if we need to change it later, I'm happy to look at that. But I think getting it out for consultation is the way to go.
Yeah, we have got a mover and a seconder, so on that basis...
I just want to, I agree with what Yanni's saying, and in the report too, it's really clear that the major agencies who are involved with drug abuse and rehabilitation, they would like to see this consultation goes out. So that's the police and the DHB and the alcohol and drug agencies. I just think we need to do it, as David indicated.
Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. Shall we...
That's fine. It's no biggie, though.
You do want to record your votes? Okay. So it's just, was it just Vicky and Jamie? Is it just Vicky and Jamie? Because we might as well for the record. Yeah. Okay, that's carried. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda.